For a technology developer, we are incredibly anti-screen time. Our goal is, how do we use technology against technology?
Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.
Hey y'all, it's Tony Rose Deanna, and they them pronouns, a designated hype person here at MCP. And today's going to be a fun recording, honestly. We've already been giggling literally the last 12 minutes before hitting record. So I just know that this is going to be such a silly and such an impactful and playful episode. So I am really, really excited to welcome Skyler Carr, who is the founder of Mission.io, and Michael Hakkarinen. Michael, I did not pronounce it the way that you wanted me to in your recording, and I apologize. I could not get it correctly, the R anyway. But Michael, I feel like we need to insert that recording of your name as well, because I don't think people would have been able to say it the way that you needed it to be said.
Well, it's hard because he also prefers that you scream it. It's hard to capture that in written form.
It's a Finnish name. And I just want to point out, just for anybody who's not familiar with the Finnish language, that you're always making the accent on the odd syllables. So it would be Hakkarinen.
Yeah, don't worry. Everyone's familiar with that.
Helsinki.
Yeah, this was just a waste of time. Everyone knew that.
Okay.
Yep.
But also, Michael, your recording was literally like 20 seconds long with your name because you wanted to really accent all of your syllables. So it was great to listen to. I really appreciate that. And y'all, Michael is the partnerships director for Modern Classrooms as well. And so I get to work with Michael all of the time. I get to meet with Skyler once a month just to kind of brainstorm ideas and share thoughts and ideas as well. And something that I was looking at y'all, both of y'all's bios, you're both elementary school teachers, actually former elementary school teachers, which now makes a lot of sense with just how goofy and silly you both are. And I'm like, yes, this is a vibe, because middle school teachers and high school teachers could never. But y'all, before we jump into this episode of like all the things that we're going to talk about, I'm really excited for you both to be in this space with me. And thank you so much for saying yes to the podcast. And so before we get started, really, what is bringing you joy currently?
Joy.
What's bringing you joy? Okay, so I got to do the answers that, in case my family watched this,
Leave that in.
make them feel like I was talking about them, because those are naturally ones, like, family, work, fulfilling. But if I'm going to go to the level below that, outside of the realms that dominate my life that I love, honestly, Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to be honest about it. And I'm going to tell you that a big part of getting into adulthood and being in this realm of constantly being pulled in a million directions. I'm at work and everyone's trying to get attention, and I go home and the same thing, and I want to be there. I'm doing my best to have all these practices in place where I can be more present. For some reason, D&D has become such a beautiful practice in being present.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why. And it's giving me this really beautiful grounding feeling where I get to just be somewhere and listen and try to respond. Because for those that are D&Ders, you're not trying to win. You're just trying to tell the best story possible in a collective effort in this beautiful theater of the mind. And it's actually extended to different aspects where, like, on weekends, I'll just turn my phone off.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Dungeons and Dragons is one of those games where it's not a race, it's a journey. And it's almost like the finish line, the farther away it is, the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're competing, but you're collaborating, and it's very cooperative.
Oh, yeah.
We should definitely put a link somewhere on this podcast to one that was done about a year or so ago with a great teacher up at Spectrum Academy named Travis Hammer, who teaches his middle school students. The name of the school is Spectrum Academy.
Yeah.
Students are on the spectrum, and they're learning through
I love the school. They do amazing work. Yeah.
He's teaching them how to learn, not just what should your character do, but how will the other characters interpret your actions and how that plays out as they learn all these social emotional skills.
Yes, but I want to know what's bringing you joy.
What's bringing me joy? Well, number one is sitting here with you, because I've worked alongside you, parallel with you for 6 or 7 years now, I feel like. And it's great to get to know you and get to know Mission IO a little bit more. I'm also excited along that line of Mission IO. Tonight, my wife and I are going to see the movie Project Hail Mary. This show is not sponsored in any way by Ryan Gosling or Andy Weir. No, I read the book.
Ryan, if you want to be on the show anytime,
you're welcome.
Come by anytime because I'm sure he listens.
Right here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see the movie tonight. I'm excited because I read the book, and it's just kind of cool because it's got that educational theme. It kind of aligns with what we're talking about here today, but
buckle up.
I'm excited about the movie.
I saw it on Saturday.
Buckle up.
I do want to say, though, thank you for sharing what's bringing you joy. I think the Dungeons and Dragons, shout out again to Travis for sharing his experience with Dungeons and Dragons in his class, and he's doing it all self-pacing. Something that I was thinking about is that interdependence and the community piece of the Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it's all about really incorporating play into working together. And I think, Michael kind of alluded to this as well, Skyler, with Mission IO. Let's do a quick overview of what is Mission IO? What does it do? Tell us all the things.
I feel like when we're talking about everything that goes on in school and everything in the classroom, through no fault of their own, teachers have to survive based off of their classroom management, which inevitably leads to us pushing down and disincentivizing talking to your neighbor, working in groups, which is natural. A teacher can't survive because their classes all have 32 kids, and you can't handle having that kind of freedom, which then only exists on the playground, which is completely unstructured, completely unsupported, no modeling, no support, no mentoring, no coaching. And I wanted to have a space where we would build in those skills as a part of what they were learning. So we started to take and working with amazing team members that worked at the Space Center, those that worked with us at this program. We all came together. We said, how do we do this? And we took what they were doing in class and put them in a ball closet. And similar to what you have here, we put up lights. We had a voice changer and a microphone, huge testament to that program that impacted us. And we started to test and iterate. And it just was working so well. It was incredible that these kids that were not engaging in class were coming into this ball closet. And when you could even get them to put their name on an assignment, they would show up and they were ready and they were turning to each other without us needing to tell them to. And they were starting to talk through the problems. They were bringing the best parts of themselves to this experience. They were arguing, and then they were in that process starting to learn how to actually interact, how to go through this. Just beautiful things on top of them solving really complex problems, dealing with the standards they were learning in class. And I'm a data nerd. And so we ended up writing a grant because I was like, I anecdotally can see the impact this is having, but I want to see if it's actually moving the needle. So we wrote a grant to the National Science Foundation. They actually reached out to us and said, hey, you obviously have never written a grant before. So we're going to interview you instead. I love the team at the NSF. Fantastic people that have just been so incredible, so supportive. And they said, we want big ideas. We want big swings that are going to move the needle. We want high risk things that are not meant for investors. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like us. And they invested into our program. They gave us funding to be able to do the research. They let us build this out. And it started with that little ball closet, spread through that school, then it spread to 5 nearby schools, then it spread to 100 schools, then it spread to 500 schools, then it spread to 1,000 schools. And we are still in that process of just figuring out how far can we go? How much can we move the needle? And how can we give teachers that same thing that we wanted, which is a chance for them to layer on that point that we feel is going to be so critical for kids in an age where technology is becoming so advanced, that we focus on the human part, that we develop that aspect of a student being able to sit in front of a problem that has no structure, surrounded by their peers who have amazing talents, beautiful gifts, amazing experience, and let everyone bring the best of themselves together to come up with the best solution, which I hope is what will fix the earth. I'm trying to save the world, is basically what I'm getting at.
And I love that. I mean, what a great goal to have, right? I mean, moving pebbles one at a time, I guess, and then you'll be able to do all of that. I mean, there's so much to this, Skyler. I have a couple of follow-up questions for you. First of all, your fifth grade teacher. Shout out to your fifth grade teacher. Do you remember their name?
Yes, Senora Munsing. It was a Spanish immersion course. She was my fifth and sixth grade teacher. If Senora Munsing ever comes across this podcast or ever sees whatever clips emerge from this, I love you. I adore you. And I am grateful for what you saw in me that I did not see in myself.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? And it's literally just that one adult that could change the trajectory of your life, right? And it was like, no, you're going to be a leader. And you're like, what? And then you failed and you're like, actually, I want to get better. And I love this. I love this trajectory that you shared with us, Skyler. And because I know for me, it was also my 5th grade teacher who like had a huge impact in my life. Miss Tidwell, shout out to Miss Tidwell, and really engaged me into reading and writing because I just moved to the States. And so it was like that reading piece really got me into all of it. And so, or just adjusting anyway to the American culture. So I really love that. Now you did bring something up and I saw, Michael, that you were shaking your head in agreement of the fact that, because it is a fact, right? That teachers are inundated with so many things. And the classroom management does come in, and because we have a curriculum to follow, we have deadlines to follow, we have standards, we have tests, we have all of these things, that there's no more discourse that's happening in the classroom, right? Or at least we don't prioritize discourse because we're scared of releasing it. So Michael, with working at Modern Classrooms, and you get to see so many classrooms every month, honestly. What are your thoughts on this discourse comment that Skyler said? And then I also want to like re-engage Skyler with like, you saw this thing that you saw this gap that was missing. You wanted our students to really practice those human skills that we are not prioritizing because of all the things that we have to do as educators. And like just kind of having that conversation of like, how can we engage students into having more discourse regardless of what the content is, right? Because a lot of the times there are teachers that'll say like, no, I can't do that in my class because then what are they going to be talking about? Or I don't have time to have discourse.
I'm glad you brought that up, TR, because Skyler, you hit a couple notes in your story that really like resonate in the chord of the music that like we're kind of both doing with this, like in Utah, we call it personalized competency-based learning. And that's where you and I first met when you came to the Magellan Summit. And we're talking about like giving what the buzzwords are here in Utah are student voice, choice, and ownership, right? And many times, not all the time, with some teachers, not all teachers, when we say those 3 words, they respond with, well, if we give them voice, they'll say all the wrong things. And if we give them choice, they'll choose not to do anything. And if we give them ownership, they'll just break it. And I can kind of see that. Like, I don't know why that just popped into my head, but last week we saw that Melania Trump is going to introduce robots to the classroom. And all I could think is like, have you ever seen an 8th grader with a Chromebook? Those robots aren't going to last 15 minutes, but, so that's one way to look at it, right? But the other way to look at it is kind of like your teacher, Senora
Munsing,
like saw potential in you as a leader and gave you the opportunity to have that voice. And you learned from that. When we release control of like herding cats in the classroom and allow students to collaborate, to get up and move around, to like form their own groups and to work in that sort of format, it seems scary. But speaking from my experience, every time I did that, the behavior management was the activity. We didn't have behavior issues. You have behavior issues when students' emotional needs aren't being met, when they're not being challenged, and when they're sitting there bored. That's when we all kind of push back. The only behavior issues I had was the neighboring teachers would come over and tell me to keep it down because we had an open classroom setup. But I was like, no, chaos is good. Loudness is learning. Like, this needs to happen. And I want to throw this out there, TR, because if you could take a clip from one of Mission IO's little videos, it shows a student at a desk and it says like, when you need help or when you need more information. And then this boot comes in and kicks them out of their chair. It's like, get up and go find it. And like, I think that's what we're really trying to create with this personalized competency-based learning, is the students having ownership and giving them that freedom. And the Modern Classrooms model, which aligns perfectly with this, provides teachers with the systems so students know where they are and know what's coming next. And that kind of like reduces that anxiety that goes along with, I'm afraid to release control.
Oh, yeah. And and I always want to make sure I'm very clear. This is never an attack on teachers because most support that's coming to teachers comes in the form of more work.
Right.
And that aspect just puts most teachers into survival mode, where we start to make a lot of mistakes at what I like to call the extremes, where exactly as you said, Michael, the existence of noise is bad. because noise is chaos, and chaos is something that I can't handle because my class is too full. I have too many things. I have too much going on, which is a completely fair take. And then the other end of the spectrum where we start to get it wrong, I call it assessment by smiles, is because the kids are smiling, because they're happy, they're enjoying themselves. We think, oh, this resource, this activity, this tool is really good. Look at how happy the kids are. And we start to misattribute what true effectiveness and what impact actually is and what it should look like. And we start to choose the wrong tools. We start to misuse technology, and then we start to overcorrect, as we see happening in society.
Oh, this is so real, right? This is so real of that assessment by smiles. And I know that I've seen activities, and I mean, I did this as well too, of like, oh, it feels good. It sounds good. But in actuality, are my students actually practicing the skills that I really want them to practice, right? And I think that's also just like such a hard conversation and a hard reflection to sit with as well, that like, oh, the things that I'm coming up with aren't actually truly impactful, right? And so you two also get to work with school leaders. Like how do those conversations go?
That was a good time to break for a commercial. Because I would say one of the pushbacks that we hear from leaders, and we do this in our professional development training sometimes, is we think that like, oh, our teachers are overwhelmed. There's too much on their plate. I can't give them one more thing. And so we give them nothing, which ironically is like the number 2 on things that make people most unhappy. People are most unhappy when they have too much, not enough time, don't feel supported, don't know what's coming next. And number 2 is when they don't have any support and they don't have anything to do and they're bored, right? It's like 1-2 punch, where we need to figure out how to balance between 1 and 2. Like, I'm going to give teachers like high expectations of like what's happening in the classroom. Yes, we have standards to hit, learning targets, success criteria. Here's a new curriculum, et cetera, but we also have to make space and time to like actually teach students and not write lesson plans, but create learning experiences. And so I think the challenge is, how do we provide the supports without them being interpreted as mandates? Because when I'm talking to leaders, it feels like, I make this analogy a lot, like a 16-year-old learning to drive. It's like gas pedal, brake pedal, gas pedal, brake pedal. And it needs to be just enough gas and then let off the gas and coast for a while, right?
I love your concept of how you describe experiences, because I think effective teaching really is, if you're going to oversimplify it, it's that journey from content deliverer to experience designer. And where every teacher is in that journey is a really big indication of, I think, how much impact they're able to have. But when it comes to a school leader's impact on each teacher's journey, this is where I'll actually come in with a couple hot takes, okay? I have probably walked or set foot in, for sure, hundreds of schools. I'm curious if it's into at least quadruple digits, but I can gauge the culture of a school within 2 minutes of entering. And it usually is a really big indicator, if I'm getting there first thing in the morning, is whether the principal is in their office getting caught up on work or if they're at the front doors welcoming students. And I think when you talk about and understand that journey along that spectrum of content delivery to experience designer, an administration, a whole team that does everything in their power to help make sure that the students arrive ready to contribute to an experience, because we have no control over what happens at home. The things that actually make a difference, whether the parent is fortunate enough to have 2 parents at home, whether they slept more than 8 hours, whether they had 3 square meals, we can't control any of these things that actually move the needle. But from the time they set foot in the school, we can start to define that experience and we can start to have an impact. And from the front doors to the classroom, I think is a really understated opportunity to try to prepare these students for the experience that the teacher is trying to design, which is why I think the second hot take is the most important hire a school can make is whoever the secretary is at the front desk.
Yeah.
Yes. Because whoever is welcoming these kids, when they feel excited to be seen, when they feel seen and heard, when they're welcomed into the school, where it's a place that they are safe, it has such a huge impact when you're talking about experience. That's why I love that. every experience, it's not just here's the information for this standard. It's what's the experience we're going to have with this information? How are we going to think through it? How are we going to solve? How are you going to use the people around you to ask them questions? What kind of investigation, what inquiry are we going to conduct? All of that requires a student to be there in the right state of mind.
And how do we create the condition for the students to be the ones asking the questions?
100%. You summarized it really well. Like that was the Instagram reel.
Instagram makes me nervous. I think it's rotting our brains. How's that for a segue?
That is also a hot take, right? That is also a hot take that social media is, there's so much going on.
Yeah, I enjoy being farmed for dopamine.
Okay, let's dive into that for a little bit here.
Ooh,
Dopamine?
Go for it. Dive into it, because this is a conversation, because screen time, right? Like connecting it back to screen time and dopamine. Let's talk about it.
I think it ties into the topic we hinted at before of assessment by smiles. I think we have a lot of tools and a lot of resources that we use that are just hits of dopamine, or just teaching our kids, not necessarily, for example, I'll name one because I love it in the right context, but I think we use it out of context. So like Kahoot, Blookit, those kinds of, gamified, as we might want to call them, platforms are not true gamification. I think it's pointification or competification. It's not teaching our kids to really think. It's teaching them to answer questions quickly and to compete.
Game showification.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, game showification, where they're competing against each other. They're answering quickly.
Those are fighting words, y'all.
No, I'm not a psychiatrist. I haven't done any brain research, but I have my analogy for dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, the three hormones that our brain releases based on experiences that make us feel good, but in different ways. I kind of compare it to like junk food, fat, and protein.
Oh, I like that.
And so, you're riding your bike, right? You ride your bike to work here sometimes, and you need a little bit of a rush. So you grab some nerd clusters, and they make you feel good, but then it kind of like you run out of energy pretty fast, and you need more of it. And that's what Instagram is. Like, you're like, this is funny, 8 seconds, I don't have attention span, boom, 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 boom. But then you've got like that oxytocin, that like hug hormone, like that
the love, the connection.
Yeah, it kind of like builds up your self-esteem, and it stays with you for a long time, and you kind of grow from it. I think that is.
But
protein.
it takes work.
It does.
Yeah.
And then you've got the serotonin, which is trying to balance things, and that's kind of like the fat, which not all fat is bad for you. Like your body needs fat, your brain needs fat. And so I get worried when I hear about products like Mission.io that the students jump in and they're like doing this game and they're cooperating, and like maybe they win or they fail forward. Like, are they just getting more dopamine? Is it just another form of too much screen time, Instagram, I need more, those nerd clusters?
It's a beautiful critique. I love that. And
I'm not a critique. It's just
but you are critical.
I'm old. My brain is like, it's not plastic anymore. What is it?
Is that chair soft enough?
No.
Okay. I love that comparison between the different chemicals, because to me, it then introduces the real conversation or the argument of what real engagement looks like. If it's not assessment by smiles, what is real engagement? And for us, it is when you get to that DOK 3 and 4, when you're really asking for students to demonstrate those human skills, to be able to work through a problem, to conduct proper inquiry, to collaborate with others, that is harder than sitting down in front of a worksheet. And for me, true engagement is, can I get a student to give me permission to push them further than they usually let themselves be pushed? And how do I use that combination of all the chemicals, where I give them the dopamine hit that gets them to lean in, where I pull in the oxytocin from the connection with their team and what that means to them, and use challenge-based learning to introduce an engagement moment that personalizes this so that they then turn to their neighbor to discuss the problem without me ever having asked them to do so. And this was something that we learned really early on. And this is kind of that side of what true gamification, not game showification, I actually love that term, is. True gamification is, are we putting students in a role where they are actually in control, where they're allowed to fail, where they can make decisions that impact how the story plays out, because they are the ones that are going to be responsible. That's the whole aspect. I love challenge-based learning. It's actually how we design all of our modules, which is engage, investigate, act. True engagement has nothing to do with the smiles. It is all about, does the student see a compelling problem that is personal enough that they understand what's at stake and feel driven to actually solve it or act or investigate because of the clarity of how powerful that engagement hits them and touches their life. So for us, it's really easy. We say, you're on a pretend spaceship, or you're in a time machine, or you're in a submarine, and there are asteroids falling towards this planet. And you've been talking for the last 2 weeks about rise over run, about how to calculate slope. Your ability to calculate slope is going to save the people on this planet. So each of your teams is getting assigned a different asteroid. They understand what's at stake. They understand what it means to them. And we have used the dopamine. There are bright colors, there are all these things, but for us, it's how quickly can we disconnect them from the technology and get them to turn to the person next to them and say, okay, what information do you have? How do we solve this? What do we need to do? I don't have the rise. I have only the run. What's your rise data? How do we get them to connect? How do we divide the information in such a way that they cannot succeed by themselves, so that we introduce that serotonin, that start to create those connections and really introduce something that pushes them further than they would normally let themselves be pushed.
And then they get that serotonin rush when they leave, which stays with them
which is our number one success metric is, can I be the first thing that the student will tell their parents when they're picked up from school? And not just, oh yeah, we went on a mission. I saved a planet today. What that means, like what they just expressed of what they're capable of, that they took something, they took knowledge, they took skills, and they applied it into the context of being able to actually impact the lives of others in a positive way. How do we build that habit and that desire more into them?
Now, you said that every student has this experience. Does every student have their own device while they're going through the mission? Because this is what scares me. I love it when my 4-year-old and 7-year-old are on an iPad, because they're on an iPad and I can maybe cook dinner or clean or get some work done.
It's great to have a third parent. Yeah.
Right. The problem isn't the iPad. It's when I take it away and then all bleep this out breaks loose, right? And they go through this immediate withdrawal. You can edit this out later, but one time I was in the airport and I saw a 2-year-old in a stroller, and all of a sudden the parents started freaking out about needing to find power. They had to find a power outlet. The kid was screaming, was in agonizing pain. And I was like, oh no, this poor child is on some type of life support, like a heart-lung machine. And if they don't find power, they're going to, how do I help? They were just trying to find a place to charge the iPad before they got, I was like, come on, are you serious? And then I see it now. And our kids. So help me understand, they're working on screens, and then you're saying that in the activity, they look away from the screen. The screen is not the focal point of what they're doing?
Yeah, for a technology developer, we are incredibly anti-screen time. Our goal is, how do we use technology against technology? I think the proper role of technology should always be in schools. Is it helping us build better humans? Because access doesn't equal impact. So when you have the conversation about one-to-one, carts, computer labs, I wish that we could stop the conversation of pro-tech, anti-tech, and just be pro-learning and be critical of the tools and the resources we're using, because then we're going to start to introduce a conversation around effectiveness. And for the listener, TR is celebrating with a happy dance.
And we could do a whole nother episode. Our next episode will be about artificial intelligence. But I've heard the argument from a number of people, most recently Sal Khan, who created Khan Academy, who said, how do we use AI to prepare students for a future where they will use AI, but have them use AI to do what machines do so that humans can be more human? It sounds like Mission IO is on the same mission.
This is a really fascinating conversation. And I'm thinking about, because there's a lot of conversations about social media now, right? And I think a lot of the times as human beings, we forget that we also have the control to block certain accounts, to really make the algorithm our own. Right. And so if you're thinking about oh, these businesses are trying to sell me, I'm like, I don't want to see that. X, unfollow, don't want to see that, block. Right. There's still that control. And I think sometimes we forget that we have that control of how we utilize the social media platforms that we have.
TR, that control is not blatantly obvious, especially to a 7, 8, or 9-year-old. It's not like when you get your account, the first thing they show you is how to control your algorithm.
And I think this is why it's even more so important to have that AI literacy, right? And in schools, but also like the critical thinking skills too of like, hey, I am my own person. I can make decisions. If I don't want to see this, if I have no interest, I actually have control. But that's like a human skill that we need to teach our students, right? And I think that's where it's coming into what Skyler talking about Mission IO of like, no, like you use tech because tech is here. We can't not use tech, right? Like it's ridiculous for us to not use tech. The kids are going to see it. The kids are going to have it outside of the classrooms as well. And so, but seeing really that true balance of like the blended learning, right? Like here's tech, you're going to use it for this thing. And then now you're going to have to collaborate. Because I think sometimes also it's like, there's a push of like all tech, and the collaboration is gone. Right. And then there's also this like, no tech, but then the kids aren't getting the skills that they need to get when they're trying to get the information that they need to get, right? So there's always, I mean, this again, y'all, we can talk about like tech all day long. And I mean, even, I don't know if y'all have seen like the New York Times article as well with the screen time and how schools now regret having Chromebooks for all the kids. And that's the reality of it, right? Because we meaning like just education system overall just did not do a good job of rolling out how to utilize technology in the most efficient way.
Here in Utah, there's legislation to remove screens from K through 2, right? And this comes back to that analogy I made at the beginning with leadership. It's like we hit the gas, then we hit the brake. And we need to find balance. In our model, in the Modern Classrooms Project, we use the phrase blended learning. Like we want students to be, maybe watching a short instructional video while they're doing work with guided notes. And in some cases, they're following instructions on paper and creating something on the screen. So maybe it's a misnomer, or it's time for us to sort of think about, instead of saying blended, we say balanced. How do we find this balance? What's the balance with Mission IO? I mean, you kind of hit it when you said you're doing this mission and then you shift and collaborate. TR, is that where you're getting at?
But even before you answer that, but even before you answer that, Skyler, because the collaboration piece is something that I've noticed too in classrooms, and I go visit classrooms, right? And again, we're not like talking smack about anybody, right? It is just the reality that collaboration is typically the first thing to go a lot of the times, right? So for me, it's also like I hear teachers say like, oh, kids don't know how to talk nowadays. They don't want to talk to each other. There's no talking. They don't even want to talk to me. Right. And so there's this piece too, is that creating that classroom culture, right? Of like, how can we get our students to engage with each other? How can we get them to start building that trust with each other so that they can collaborate? Because it's not just going to be an overnight, we're going to do Mission IO and all the kids are going to talk. And it's like, no. There's also steps before that. Like, yes, wouldn't it be fun to just be like, here's a mission that you all are going to work on and now y'all got to talk, right? But in reality, like a lot of the times, again, teachers don't have time or don't have the capacity or the energy to create moments of discourse to happen in the classroom so that students do get used to talking to each other. Because if you go straight to being like slope, right? Kids are going to be like, what? I don't got nothing to say about the slope. Like, what do you mean? I don't even know this kid. Why would I talk to him about this stuff, right? So I think it's also important to say like like teachers and school leaders, like we really need to create that space for our students to feel brave enough to speak to each other, to ask for help, and also to start trusting, building that trust within that community, within that space, the 4 walls. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Because I feel like, oh, this is a skill we got to teach. We got to continue teaching this.
There's a really interesting thing I saw posted a few weeks ago from a group called TeachFX. And they analyzed 100,000 hours of classroom audio. And they found that for every hour of direct instruction, students will speak on average 7 seconds. And one of my favorite traders from UEN, I got to go to one of her sessions, and she was actually sharing this example where she went to a classroom and the teacher was really struggling with exactly what you're saying. My kids don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to collaborate. It's impossible to get them to do any group work. And she started to ask some really good questions about like, well, do you let them talk in class? And the teacher said, oh, heavens no. And it's just this reality that the only time the kids are allowed to freely have discourse is on the playground. And it's completely unstructured. And there's usually not objectives that we're working towards that are meaningful. And it takes a really skilled and talented teacher with the right environment, the right opportunity, the right workload to be able to make that happen. And that's why even going back to the questions about like social media, I totally struggle with it. I have such a hard time. I have to force myself in very strict moments where I've tried to curate mine to be very connected to technology themes or things that I can learn. So it's I'm going to go in until I learn something and then I'm done. And even with my kids, I don't know if this is the right approach, but none of them have access to social media. But I will, for example, scroll TikTok with my daughters, and I'll say, "Okay, let's look at the time. All right, let's look at some videos." And we do this, and we giggle together, we laugh. There's inside jokes that we have. It's this beautiful moment, and then I make sure to point out to them, can you believe that 15 minutes just went by? You know how easy it would be to be going through this? And then we get to talk about brain chemistry. We get to talk about how this platform is incentivized to keep me connected forever. And that's where the really big indicator for me that helps lead to some of these inroads to proper communication is how effectively, and this is kind of your example of the screaming child in the airport that's addicted to the iPad and the parents not having any other way to solve that, is how well can we get someone to walk away from the tech in any given moment? How well can we get them to disconnect? How well can I get myself when I run out of Claude credits? Can I then go and just write the thing myself and not feel inundated or feel like I can't get my work done? How well do we step away from that? And even in our own platform, our own experience design, our goal is in the first 5 minutes, we need to try to get the kids to turn away from the tech. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we've designed the experience wrong.
So this just came full circle back to your question, TR, which I don't want to say I take issue with it, but I'm thinking of like the phrasing of it. You asked, how do we teach students that discourse? In the classrooms, we're teaching knowledge, right? But, and this is just my own personal educational philosophy, I welcome people to argue with it. I don't think we teach skills. And we definitely don't teach dispositions. I think we create the conditions for students to develop skills. And as a result, they within themselves develop their dispositions. So I don't think we should be teaching students how to collaborate and communicate. We should be just creating those conditions, which is what Mission.io does. And it's what you're doing when you're modeling TikTok with your daughter.
And it becomes a huge inequality issue if you leave it unaddressed as well. Right. Because otherwise, those skills and those dispositions are left to luck. Did you happen to be a part of enough extracurriculars? Did you happen to have mentors? Did you happen to whatever it is? And it often leaves those communities that don't get the same access at a complete loss and a complete deficit for the things that society is going to judge them for more critically than any times tables they've memorized, any historical knowledge they repeat, any grammatical syntax, subject predicate. Society does not care about that as much as your ability to connect with me emotionally, to listen, to be empathetic. These things that we don't focus on and yet somehow expect kids to pick up along the way. Mm-hmm.
Skyler, you said a lot of things. First of all, I want to acknowledge and recognize that the way our upbringing, right, impacts how we show up in the space. And I think a lot of reflection needs to happen about our upbringing as well to figure out what our values are and what our beliefs are and what we want to do in this world to make it better, right? So thank you for sharing your piece of like, this is what happened and this is my ancestors. This is what happened. So this is what I'm trying to create for students, for the youth, right? I think my ADHD is kicking in and I'm so hyper-focused on the 7 seconds that you said that you had shared with students talking. That to me is wild.
It's a startling fact.
It is and it's not. right? Like, I'm actually not surprised because, again, I've been in a lot of classrooms where in my head, I was like, wow, like, I don't think I could survive in this class because it's literal silence. And so I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how that works. And then another thing too, I do want to give a shout out to Elena Aguilar, because one of her books also said that, you know, there was a point where it was an experience that she wrote about. I don't know if it was her own experience or someone else, but she followed a student, right? And this is a student who's a multilingual learner. So really learning English, and no discourse happened the entire day. So it was like, how are we supposed to get students to learn the language if they're not speaking it? And so that was like that was what I was thinking. And then you said 7 seconds, and I was like, that is wild. So sorry to hyperfocus on that. You said some really great things, but all I could think about was like 7 seconds, 7 seconds, 7 seconds, 7 seconds.
When I saw it was the only thing I could think about for several weeks as well. You're completely fine.
The biggest thing that's coming up for me with this whole conversation is the importance of connection, the importance of being able to build relationships with other people so that we can continue creating a better environment for all of us, right? This connecting piece of like, let's have conversations, let's have discourse, right? Let's have less screen time, utilizing technology in the most efficient way and not depending on it, and really focusing on the pro learning piece of it as opposed to going back and forth with like, is tech good, is tech bad, right? And so I just really appreciate, again, this whole coming back to community, going back to connection, going back to like human-centered skills. And I also really love that both of you also said modeling. Modeling is so important. This is why we tell our teachers all the time to model, 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 so that students can see it in action. Students can see how it feels, how it sounds, how it looks. And then they can also start playing with whatever the teacher is modeling, right? And so I really appreciate this conversation. I think this conversation is so great. And we've gone to like so many different topics. And I think it's fascinating to have this conversation. And so before we close off though, like, is there anything else? Because I know, Skyler, you took lots of notes, and Michael, you have a lot of things in your brain, and it is also April Fool's Day. So like, I'm actually kind of proud of Michael for not having any dad jokes during the episode. So is there anything else that y'all want to share with our listeners before we go?
TR, I take offense that you just immediately thought that in a podcast situation, I would make a lot of dad jokes.
Michael, I've been around you several times now where you always do a dad joke. So I was quite surprised that you did not have it. Maybe it's because I told you I didn't really like your dad jokes that you've been.
Listen, on our visit to school.
By the way, this is a safe space
outside
if you need.
Are you going to start cracking safe jokes now?
Yes, the alley-oop. He got it. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Hakkarinen has arrived.
I did have the it's a Finnish name, and I'm just getting started at the beginning of the show.
It was really good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed it.
We're visiting this school in Georgia, and TR said something about everybody likes traveling with you because you're it's like traveling with your dad. Because you're always making these dad jokes.
And you're old.
Probably. But yeah. I was like, I have a lot of dad jokes because I keep them in my database.
Okay. All right. Well, I think... Yeah. So listeners, we're going to put all the resources in the show notes so that you can find out more information about Mission.io, because it is a really dope resource that you all have to look through, look at, and then hopefully implement and use in your classrooms.
There's a free trial, isn't there?
Yeah, that never expires. It's something that we hope everyone will get in, because the more missions that you run, the better data we're able to get as we refine the skill metrics. Because the big thing that you're going to see is we've taken the standards and we've tried to apply human skill scenarios to every single standard, where the students get to sit in front of a problem that is abstract and they have to work together. They have to solve it by applying what they just learned in class. And what we've been building with the NSF is a way to track that. So we're looking at interactions, we're looking at connection points, we're looking at the flow of information. We're trying to actually see objectively, what did they demonstrate? What performance did they show in their collaboration, their resilience, their initiative, their critical thinking? So please use it. Use it as much as you want. There's no limits. The free stuff cycles through all the content we're trying to get more feedback and data on. And from everything that I love about Modern Classroom, like, it is such a perfect alignment in terms of those that are really trying to go down that journey of just content deliverers to experience designers. This is, if you are anywhere interested in trying to nudge it even further, it will really help that Modern Classroom practice.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you both again for your energy. I love this. I love it. I think it's a needed space for me to be on the podcast and have a joyful conversation where we're just chuckling and giggling and being playful. So
yeah, same time next week.
Yeah, same time next week. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. Listeners, remember you can always email us at podcast@modernclassrooms.org, and you can find the links to topics and tools we discussed, as well as more info on this week's announcements and events, in the show notes for this episode at podcast.modernclassrooms.org. We'll have this episode's recap and transcript uploaded to the Modern Classrooms blog on Friday, so be sure to check there or check back in the show notes for this episode if you'd like to access those. And if you enjoy our podcast and it's been helpful in supporting you to create a blended, self-paced, mastery-based learning environment, we would love if you could leave a review. That does help other folks find our podcast. And of course, you can always learn the essentials of our model, if you want to go beyond the podcast, through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. And you can follow us on social media at ModernClassProj. That's Proj. We are so appreciative of all the hard work you do for students and schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.